The City of Phoenix holds community budget hearings throughout April, allowing residents to comment and make suggestions on the city manager's trial budget before final decisions are made. This public discussion is among the reasons the city's budget so closely matches the community's highest priorities each fiscal year.
Good evening. Welcome. This is kind of like church and how people are sitting too, so you can move up front if you want to get closer. We don't bite up here. My name is Ed Zerker. I'm the city manager. Welcome to this is the 13th of 15 budget hearings, so we hope this is a lucky hearing tonight. We have several things we want to do. We have a video that we'll get to, but before we get started, I'll ask our interpreter, Judy Holm, if she'll introduce herself.
Buenas tardes, me llamo Judy, soy intérprete de español. Si alguien necesita el equipo, estoy en la mesa de atrás. Gracias.
Thank you. So before we get to the film and a welcome from our host council members, just a couple things. I would invite you, if you haven't had a chance, to please pick up one of these budget booklets. It's a very complex budget this year. We are trying to deal with issues of our property taxes that pay debt service. Property taxes pay for some operating costs, but they also pay debt service on things like this beautiful library that we're in, parks, streets, police stations, fire stations, and so we have a question this year about continuing to pay for those with our property tax. That'll be explained in the video. We also have a budget, which is very complicated when you have a $3 billion corporation like the city, and we're also in the middle of negotiating labor contracts with our unions, and so there are questions about how much money that is, how much of a restoration will there be, and how does that impact our budget. All those things are explained, and we break them down in a couple of charts in this book, and I think it's about as simple as we can make it in there. So we just invite you to make sure you get a copy of this, and the video also refers to pages of the book. If you'd like to speak this evening, we'd ask you to fill out a card there in the back, and that's so we know in what order to call your name, and also so we can take the minutes. These meetings are captured on Channel 11. They're presented on Channel 11, but then they're also on YouTube, available at any time on the Phoenix channel on YouTube. We also take minutes, and all the council members get a copy of the minutes for each meeting. So if they're not able to attend, they are able to read the comments that people give. So we're happy to be here with our host district council members, Councilman Pastor, Councilman Nowakowski. They will both say a couple words to you of welcome after the video. And with that, we will go to the video to explain. We'll have some comments, and then we'll get to your questions and comments. So thank you again for being here. And with that, we will roll the tape.
Phoenix 2016-17. Hello everyone, and welcome to your first look at the City of Phoenix 2016-17 City Manager's Trial Budget.
Input from our residents is very important, as your ideas can help shape what will end up being the final budget for the next fiscal year.
The final budget is important because it provides the plan for how the city will spend taxpayer money and how services that you depend on could be impacted.
I think the city manager's trial budget provides a great pathway for us to continue providing the outstanding services that Phoenix residents expect, and it gives employees the opportunity to continue to provide that great service every day.
Why is a balanced budget important? It's required by state law and city charter. In this trial budget, there is a $60 million surplus that can be used to improve essential services that will benefit the community. Examples include public safety needs, employee compensation, and restoration of some programs and services. So how does the funding work? Funding for the city budget comes from three sources: the general fund, enterprise funds, and special revenue funds. Examples of general fund city departments include police, fire, the library, parks and recreation, and streets. Enterprise fund departments include aviation, water services, solid waste services, and the convention center. Special revenue funds account for designated sources of money for a specific purpose, like sales tax dollars for the hiring of police officers and firefighters, and funds for public transit.
So how did we get here? Under the leadership of the mayor and city council, we are glad to say the budget is balanced.
The mayor and city council have really set the tone and direction for our city staff and employees to be focused on innovation and efficiency.
Here's just some of the ways that happened. First, eliminating 119 vacant positions and other administrative savings actions that will result in an overall savings of just over $11 million. Second, there is a one-time carryover of $25 million from last year's surplus. Also, the city is saving by making needed adjustments to the Workers' Compensation Fund and has sold extra police helicopters that were too expensive to maintain. Did you know that Phoenix has reduced administrative expenses and has the smallest number of employees per capita in over 40 years? And while still providing great services, the city has reduced authorized staffing levels by more than 2,700 positions. That is 16% since 2007. Also, city staff is constantly finding innovative ways to save money. Did you know that since 2010, we have saved $106 million in taxpayer funding? Some examples. The municipal court. It saved almost $600,000 by eliminating a criminal courtroom and a civil courtroom due to lower court volume. Plus, a new process with copy services. By reducing the number of printers and copiers citywide and securing more competitive rates with copy contracts,
We're going to do something a little different. It worked pretty well last night with Councilman Pastor. What I'm going to do is ask our budget director if we can just turn off the video, please. What's that? Yeah, we'll start. If we can just turn off the video and turn on the lights, please. Apologize. Can you get Nick or someone, just come and let's just turn it off. We'll just turn off the video. Ladies and gentlemen, Cindy Salazar from the mayor's office. Thank you very much, Cindy. Good job. Appreciate it. See, you need someone under 30 to be able to operate these things, right? So what we'll do is I'll ask our budget director, Jeff Barton, if he would just walk you verbally through the budget. The video is really awesome. Many of you have probably seen it. It'll be on Channel 11. But we'll just take some time to give you the overview verbally. And I'll ask Jeff, maybe Jeff just come stand up here at this microphone. Jeff, if you want to just come up
Laura
here.
wants to go first.
Oh, Councilman Pastor? We'll do that. All right, take it away.
So thank you for being here. Okay. Hello? Technical difficulties
All
tonight.
over the place.
It's okay. But teachers manage to work through all the chaos or all the little pieces that happen as you're teaching. Welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it. I saw Councilman Nowakowski. He just stepped out. And so glad to see you. Last night, at one of the budget hearings, I asked for everybody to get this booklet. If you have this booklet, it's in the back because it's very informative and it helps understand the different options. There are 5 different options within here. And on page 5, there's a summary of the revenue options. And then 6 through 10 are the different options. And it's very important to know the different options and be able to tell us when you come up what option you would like to see, or which option you're in between 2 and 3, or can't stand 5, or like 5, or want 1. And so it's great to hear that feedback. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff because he does a really good job of explaining everything.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pastor. Does everyone have this booklet in their hands? Okay, so the first page I'd like to direct you to is to page 5. Page 5, you should have a grid that shows summary of revenue options. So where we are in this budget, the budget that we're presenting today, the video kind of cut out on you, but what we've been saying is this is probably one of the most complicated and complex budgets that we've ever had to present to the community and to the council. And there's a variety of reasons as to why that is. Number one, we are at a point where we're trying to just balance the budget, which is always a challenge in itself. On top of that, we're also at the point where we're negotiating with our labor unions on employee restorations. Our employees over the last 3 contracts have taken about 6% worth of employee concessions. About 1.8% of that has been restored. So they have about 4.2% worth of concessions that are still outstanding. So that's also complicating into the budget process. The other piece that's really complicating the budget process at this point in time is our debt service. We currently have a property tax rate that's $1.82. It's been $1.82 for a very, very long time, since about 1995. And so right now that $1.82 is split into 2 rates, a primary rate which pays for all of the services and all the city staff, and our secondary rate, which pays for the maintenance and the debt service costs on our capital facilities. So like this building and some of the parks facilities, as well as some of the senior centers, some of the rec centers. So right now, what we've been doing over the last couple of years, our debt service, we're not collecting enough in the property tax to pay our debt service. So what we've been doing is we've been relying off of essentially a $300 million fund balance that we accumulated in the early 2000s when property values were growing really fast. We had about $300 million that we accumulated in that fund. That fund allowed us to keep our property tax rate flat when our property values were dropping. What other cities in the valley did during that same time, they raised their property taxes to ensure that they could levy the same amount of money. What the council did, what the city of Phoenix did, we used that reserve fund, which was about $300 million. Rather than raising our rate, we drew that fund down to give property tax or homeowners property tax relief. The average homeowner in Phoenix, as a result of the action that council took, saved about $290 over the course of those 5 years. We're at a point now, though, where that reserve has been drawn down to its lowest level, and we cannot continue to draw it down any further, or our very good bond rating, which is like our credit rating. Like you have a 720 score, you have a very good score. The city of Phoenix has a AA+ bond rating. That's the highest rating of any of the 6 largest cities in the country. We want to keep that. So what we have to do, this budget proposes 6 different options to ensure that we can continue to pay our debt service. Right now, the gap is about $37 million. So we've laid out 5 different options as to how we can get there. Option number 1, it deals with adjusting our property tax rate up. So it's a 35-cent increase to the property tax on your secondary property tax. That would result in about $4.25 to the average homeowner, or about $51 a year more of property tax that you would pay on your property tax bill as a result of Phoenix. That's option 1, and I'll walk you through all the other mechanics behind what that means in a little bit. Option number 2 that's presented here as a revenue option, if the will of the community and the will of the council does not support a property tax increase, well, we still have that $37 million shortfall that we've got to address. Instead of property taxes, we propose that there are 3 other alternatives that would still generate that same $37 million. What those are is an increase to the general sales tax of about 0.125. So the City of Phoenix sales tax rate now is about 2.3%. This would raise it to about 2.4%. We also consider the option of reinstating the food tax at 1.25%. That would also generate $37 million. The third option that we present in that option 2 is an assessment on the city services bill or the water bill of roughly $5.25. That would also generate approximately $37 million. Those are the 2 revenue options. Options 3 and 4 deal with our surplus. So for next fiscal year, 16-17, we've identified a $60 million surplus that is available. What the city manager's budget proposes under option 1, we'll walk through in a bit, it proposes that we use that $60 million to restore services to the community as well as restore compensation to our employees. Option 3, though, would take that $60 million surplus and it would allocate it over the course of 2 years to property tax. So you would not have funds available to restore employee compensation. You would not have funds available to restore services to the community. And what it would also mean is that in fiscal year 18-19, the council would still have to make a very tough decision about property taxes, and they would not have a fund balance to really bail us out. Option 4 is essentially a hybrid of the approach that the city manager is recommending and the kicking the can approach essentially to our property tax issue. So it would take essentially half, roughly $24 million, of the debts of the $60 million surplus and allocate it to 1 year of property tax relief. And with that relief, we would still then, again, in 17-18, have to raise property taxes. But under that scenario, we would be able to do some employee restoration as well as some services to the community. And I'll walk you through all that in a bit. And then option 5 is the option in which there is no new revenue. We're not using the surplus for property tax, but instead what we would do is we would eliminate $37 million worth of programs to fill the void of our shortfall on our debt service. So that's the high level on page 5. So now I want you to turn to page 6. So page 6, and page 6 through 10 will essentially all start at the same place, a $60 million surplus. That's about halfway down the page on each one of these next pages that we'll walk through. You'll see our $60 million surplus. Before I start talking about these, though, one thing I want to emphasize, and again, I want to give a good deal of credit to the mayor, the council, as well as the city manager. When we were at this process last year, at this point in our budget process last year, for fiscal year 16-17, we were looking at a deficit of $31 to $58 million. But because of the direction, the leadership of the mayor and city council, the hard work of our City of Phoenix employees, that deficit has been eliminated. And we are now looking at a $60 million surplus. So I think that's really important to celebrate, that the city is able to turn that around. So I think that's something that everyone that's a city employee that's contributed, you should be recognized, as well as the mayor and city council. You should also be recognized for that hard work. So again, we're talking about a $60 million surplus. So on page 6, this is option 1. This is the city manager's recommended trial budget. So under this option, the dot points at the top of this page kind of explain to you what the assumptions are. Assumption number 1, our debt service issue, that $37 million void that I talked about, that gets addressed through a property tax increase. That's the assumption here. We also are assuming that because of that, we have $60 million surplus that we could use to restore programs and restore compensation to our employees. So what the city manager has identified on this page are 4 primary areas, or 4 key areas that he wants to address. Number 1 is public safety enhancement. So many of you know, based on what's going on in the news, and as well as what's happening in the council chambers, there's been a large push from the community for body cameras. So what you see on this page is a 3-year phased-in approach to body cameras. And it's a 3-year plan because that's a responsible plan to phase it in over time rather than rush to do it all in 1 year. And you see that we've basically created a 3-year set-aside to deal with that over the course of 3 years. That's roughly $11 million to do that. The other thing is fire electronic patient records. Currently, the City of Phoenix is the largest entity in the state that does not have electronic patient records for its paramedics. All other entities in the state that are as large as we are have electronic patient records. Under the Affordable Health Care Act of 2017, next year, providers will actually start being dinged or negatively impacted for not having electronic patient records. So what we're proposing is that we institute that program for the fire department to ensure that our firefighters, our paramedics, have the equipment and the necessary needs to actually process all of us in the event that we would need an ambulance in a fast and efficient manner. We also think that this will actually save money in the long term and make the fire department much more efficient. So that's a $2.8 million investment, but what's important to know as well is our fire department, through its paramedic service or emergency transportation services, they bring in about $37 million worth of revenue a year. So again, a $2.8 million investment on a business that generates basically $37 million. I think that's important to do. The next thing that you have under here is North Mountain. There's a road and a tower for North Mountain. North Mountain is a very key component of our public safety radio system. The top of the tower, or the top of that mountain, there is a radio tower. The radio tower is now obsolete. It needs to be replaced. The road getting there is very bad. It's in bad shape. It's been eroded from the weather, from the rain, as well as some of our hikers that have not really taken very good care of the road as well. The total cost of that project is about $7 million. What's reflected here is $1 million installment. We're going to pay it off over time, but it's something that we really have to do because our public safety folks depend on that tower. Then on the next two items in that category are basically, one is for PTSD. The city manager actually formed an advisory committee, and that advisory committee recommended that the city implement some sort of wellness program for the police department so that they could address issues of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. What this does is it adds a psychologist to the department to really deal with the issues for our first responders, as well as the key staff out in the department, crime scene specialists that go out and they may see some things that really that impact them emotionally going forward. And then finally, the last thing in that category is what we're calling a employee notification and training system. Most employees or large employers in the state right now, they're already doing some sort of active shooter training. You look at what's going on in the news. A few weeks ago in Brussels, the city of Phoenix is really just getting started on that, and that's what this is. And it's also a notification system, so we can notify our employees on where to go in the event of an active shooter situation. The next category is employee restoration. So again, I referenced the fact that our employees have taken 4.2% worth of concessions. The value or the cost to restore those concessions in total is $44 million in 1 year, so $44 million annually. What the city manager is recommending is that we partially restore, 2.6%, and we do it over the course of 2 years. 1.6% the first year and 1% the second year. And we're creating a set-aside, and the reason we're doing this is something also that's unique to us. You'll see us showing the cost of 2 years for this as well as the body camera program. The reason we're doing that, right now we have a surplus, but in our 5-year forecast that we presented to the council a few months ago, we see that the economy may soften in the coming years. And as a result of that, we may face some challenges. We may face some economies, and as well as the budget may face some deficits. So while we have the money on hand, we thought it made sense to reserve that and book it so that we had the money to finish out the contracts, rather than add to a potential deficit in a second year. The next item is really dealing with youth, or actually it's dealing with expanded services or prior cuts. So you'll see $100,000 for the library. Our library back in 8-9, starting in 2008-9, they've cut hours. Many of you know that are patrons of the library. What we found, many of us that use the library or use any type of service now, a lot of things are now electronic. A lot of us have e-readers. So rather than trying to add hours, which means more staff and it's more costly, we found by working with the library, we could actually increase electronic media. And with that electronic media, they can serve many more people. So this $100,000 is geared toward that. We're also going to be adding some dollars that were eliminated a few years ago for streets in our blight in the right-of-way area. And then we also have arts grants. Some of you will be here speaking tonight on behalf of arts grants. We're adding about $50,000 here for arts grants. And then finally, an air quality specialist. That rounds out that category. And then the next category is support for youth and veterans. Again, many of us know that our youth programming is important. Many of us consider that public safety before public safety, keeping kids out of trouble, keeping them out of the streets, and keeping them engaged with the community. That's really important. So you'll see some allocations there for youth, as well as our vets. Our vets are coming back from serving our country. The city of Phoenix is really doing a very good job at addressing veterans' homelessness. This budget proposes that we do a little bit more. And then on top of that, we're also adding some funding for our vets to institute an entrepreneurship program. Many of our vets coming back and they want to own businesses. This is going to provide some training for them so they can actually start doing some of that. So that's option number one. So this is what happens if we raise the property tax by 35 cents and we use the $60 million surplus to address these items that I just mentioned to you. Option two on page 7 is essentially the same thing as option one. The only difference here is how we close that gap. So instead of a property tax increase, we would use one of those other 3 revenue-generating options: increasing the general sales tax, bringing back the food tax, or an assessment on the water bill. Everything else remains the same. So the employee concession or the restoration stays at 2.6%. We do the public safety enhancements. We also do the restoration of prior year cuts, as well as the veterans and youth funding. So that's option 2. So they're 1 and 2 are the same. The only difference is the vehicle or how we close that $37 million gap, okay? So as we go to the next page, page 8, this is option 3. So as you can see, again, $60 million surplus like all the other options, but under this option, you'll notice that all those four program areas that the manager has identified, they're blank, because we would not have the funding to do any of those things under this scenario, because we're taking all of that $60 million surplus to use it on property tax and debt service for 2 years. Now again, what's important to know about that is it's one-time money, and that the council would still have to make a decision on property taxes in fiscal year 18-19. But we would not be able to add anything else, okay? The next page, page 9, is option 4. So under option 4, this is a hybrid. So we take about $24 million under this option to defer the decision on property tax for 1 year. So we would not have to raise property taxes for 16-17, but we would have to address them for 17-18. Under this scenario, we could only partially fund one option under public safety enhancement, and that's the EPCR, the electronic patient record system, and that's not even full funding. Remember, full funding was 2.8. This is 2.1. So we still have some ground to make up on finishing out that project as well. Also on this option, you'll see that our employee compensation is decreased from the previous versions. This represents 1.6% of restoration instead of 2.6%, because we're using some of the money on the property tax issue, okay? So, and then we go to page 10. Page 10 is option 5. So option 5, again, in the event that there is no will to raise additional revenue, we would have to find a way to cut our costs to continue to pay our debt service by $37 million. So what that means is that we would have to eliminate programs and services. So starting on page 19 of this document, actually page 18, you'll see a list that totals $44 million worth of programs that could be eliminated in the event that this is the direction or the direction of the council as well as the community. So again, we would have to cut $37 million worth of programs to provide ongoing revenue for our debt service issues. Under that option, we would still be able to do public safety because we still have our $60 million. We would also be able to restore our employee compensation at 2.6%, but we would lose the funding for the youth, we would lose the funding for the veterans, and we would also lose the ability to fund previously impacted services and programs. So those are the 5 options that are laid out before you. Those are the options that I believe the council members will want you to speak and tell us when you come up to the mic, when your name is called. Tell us which option you support in addition to what other comments you want to make so that we can tally that, because it's really important. This budget process, this doesn't exist in any other city in the valley for the most part. It's a very transparent process. We have 15 of these hearings. The purpose of these hearings is to get your feedback to ensure that what we do in our budget reflects the will of the community. So it's very important, and I want to thank all of you for actually attending this meeting tonight. Sorry we had some technical issues, but hopefully the description that I just gave you actually covers a lot of what was in the video. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our council members.
Well, good evening, and thank you for being out here. I'm Councilman Michael Nowakowski. I represent District 7, and this great library happens to be right on the border of, well, in District 7, right on the border of District 4. First of all, I just want to thank you. it's really important for us to hear, what are your needs? What are the needs of the citizens of the city of Phoenix? And what are the wants also? I have 6 children at home, and they want everything. But at the same time, I have to look at what are the needs of running our household. And that's what I want to hear from you all, is what are the needs that you all see? And at the same time, what are the wants? And what are you willing to give up to receive those wants? And is it a property tax? Is it a food tax? How do we get there? And at the same time, this is my 8th year as a council member, and I've been to 8 different years of budget hearings, and I want to come up with a solution. I don't want to be coming back every single year, coming up with, well, we're short here, we're short there. I think it's time for us as a city to come up with a solution. I think it's time for us to really pay back our employees for all those sacrifices they have done within the last 6 years. And I've been hearing testimonies throughout the 3 different budget hearings I've been to this year, not just from our employees, but from their family members. And it affects not just the employees, but also their family members that are sacrificing those 6% that they were willing to give up so that we can keep all these great services, from the libraries to our parks and recs to our senior centers and all that. And it's a sacrifice that our employees have done for the last 6 years. And I think now that we have $60 million, that we need to pay it back. And we need to make sure that our employees are taken care of. The other thing is I want to hear from you all is that there's a group of individuals saying that we need body cameras on every single officer and that we should have 2,000 body cameras on all our officers. Is that really a need or is that a want? Do we want more police officers out on the street, or do we need more body cameras? Or what do we do with that $11.4 million, and what other programs can we use it for, or should we use it for body cameras? We're here to be good stewards with your tax dollars. And that's what we're here to listen to, is how to be those good stewards with your tax dollars. So I'll be quiet, listen to you all, and thank you for coming out.
All right, so we have 22 cards. We'd ask you to try to stay within 3 minutes so that we have enough time for everybody to have a chance to speak. We'd ask you to come up to the microphone to speak again so that everyone can hear, and also so it can be captured for Channel 11. The video, if you really want to see it, it's really good, is available on the website at phoenix.gov/budget, along with all this information and even more. So as much as you want to get into the budget is available online 24/7, phoenix.gov/budget. So we will start with Joe Reed will be our first speaker, and Joe will be followed by Richard Ray.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, City Manager Zuercher, Councilwoman Pastor, Councilman Nowakowski, and everyone that's in attendance. My name is Joe Reed. I'm a firefighter with the City of Phoenix. I've been with the City of Phoenix for almost 10 years. I'm also a member of the United Phoenix Firefighters Local 493. My son, Aiden. As a single father, personal finances are always at the forefront for me. That means that I can provide for him, take care of him, and give him the best opportunities that I can possibly do. And that's why I'm speaking tonight. I've always tried to instill integrity in Aiden and teach him to be honest and fair, and that his word and his actions are always to be trusted. Okay. I've also taught him to live by the golden rule, to do unto others as, he would want done unto him. Being a firefighter requires this same mentality. And as firefighters, we not only help the community and the taxpayers by responding to fires and other emergencies, but we do many other things that sometimes go unnoticed. And during the downturn in the city's economy, beginning in 2008, firefighters agreed to help the city and the taxpayers by taking concessions in pay and benefits. During that time, the city saved approximately $500 million. These concessions have totaled up to 4.2% over the past 6 years. We were promised in contract negotiations that these concessions would be fully restored when the city's budgets returned to full strength. Since 2010, the city saw a 32.7% increase in state shared revenue, 53.2% increase in state shared income tax, and a 32.6% increase in state shared vehicle license fees. The city's general fund revenues have grown 16% to $1.1 billion in the fiscal year 2016-2017, which is the highest in the Phoenix history. The current city manager's budget proposal only offers a 2.6% restoration in these concessions. We agree to take. That is still a 1.6% deficit and money owed back to firefighters and their families. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The time is always right to do what is right." And ladies and gentlemen, this is the right time. I ask that you fully restore our pay and benefits promised to us. I'd like to lead by saying that if you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. Help me show my son that the city of Phoenix, who I'm proud to be a firefighter for and represent, is a city of integrity. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Is Richard Ray still here? I think he might have left. Richard writes that he supports option 1, asks that it be adopted. The next speaker will be Greta Rogers. Greta will be followed by Donna Reiner.
That was a tall firefighter.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad you're so smart. And you are. My name is Greta Rogers. I've been to all of these meetings so far, and this will be my swan song. I live in District 6. I totally support Joe Reed and what he asked for. It's the right thing to do. The city made a promise in 10 when they asked the employees to give up 6% of their income. And they willingly did so that the city could continue to provide essential services. Promised when they were fluid again, they would pay the debt back. The day has come. The debt must be repaid in full. No alternatives, no options. I talked with Ed privately in January, and I said to him in preparation for this time of year, which I knew was coming, there are 3 essentials that the city must fulfill and honor. And there's no compromise in this. The first is what I just talked about, restore full salary and benefits to the employees. Second is to restore full complement to the police department and the fire department within this 2-year period of budget planning and execution. These people have been working shorthanded for over 6 years. It's unfair to them, it's unfair to the public safety for all of us, and it's the right thing to do, restore full complement within 2 years. And if you plan carefully, you can do that. And that right now is more important than $11 million for body cameras, plus there's an additional unknown millions of dollars for the support electronic backup that is needed for the records to be kept for years. We don't need it right now. They've done a trial run in Maryvale with it, and I haven't heard a report on it. I hope it has been successful. It was the right part of the city to start to do your experiment. But right now, you need to restore both these departments to full complement for their good and for the benefit of all of us. 3, I want the street department to be given the full amount of money it needs for the coming year and the following year to begin with a plan for restructuring, rebuilding our rights of way, both streets, sidewalks, the whole Megillah, lights, signage, curbs, the whole thing, particularly in the heart of the city from Northern to Baseline and 32nd to 59th Avenue. These are essential for the public health and safety of the community. The other stuff we can talk about and see what we can afford, but the 3 essentials I've enunciated are essential. And I support the property tax. 35 cents additional isn't going to put anybody in the poorhouse. You spend $4.20 or 25 cents taking one child to McDonald's, one parent, one child, to eat pure fat, fried starch, and adulterated brown sugar. So get your priorities straight. In 20 and a half years, we haven't raised the property tax, and it is absolutely essential that we do, and it is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Greta. Just to clarify one thing, the body camera amount in there is fully contained with all the data storage and personnel, so there's nothing else in addition to that. Donna Reiner, and Donna will be followed by Tim Kenobi.
I'm Donna Reiner. I live in District 4, and I want to thank my councilwoman, Laura Pastor, and my former councilman, Mr. Nowakowski, for being here. And I do especially want to say that I happen to be a member of the Arts and Culture Commission, and although you missed the video, our wonderful city manager taped all of his interview in the gallery at City Hall, which I urge you to check out. So anyway, I want to thank you for all the past support that we've had for arts and culture grants and other initiatives that the Arts and Culture Commission, as well as the Office of Arts and Culture, administer. It's been over 30 years, and we have championed the development, promotion, and sustainability of Phoenix's vibrant cultural community. It's very difficult, I find, sometimes to talk about arts and culture, especially following Greta Rogers. And I think I'm playing team tag with her from the last commission. But once we have all of Maslow's priorities, this food, our shelter, safety, which is important, arts and culture help to make our life much more bearable, much more fun, much more exciting. So the commission supports the city manager's trial recommendations, either option 1 or 2, which includes revenue increase, and the partial restoration made previously to cuts to the arts and culture grants. If they are not approved, either one of these options, we do not support cuts to the cultural facilities management and property management services, which some of you might not realize would impact the operations at the Phoenix Art Museum, the Phoenix Theater, and the Children's Museum of Arizona. Many of you might attend any of those facilities. For myself, the arts are really important. My mother was an artist, even though she was trained as a nurse. My sisters are all artists. I have 2 degrees in music. I still use it as a avocation. I play in the Play It Again band during the Fiesta Bowl parade. So arts are really important for the young and the old. So it's important to remember that no matter what age, the City Arts and Culture Office is offering something that you can use, that there's a class, there's support for organizations where you can go to the ballet, the different concerts, Ballet Under the Stars. So we will hopefully continue to work with you and encourage you to support the arts and culture because it does play such a vital role in our city, in our city's economy, and people actually travel here to see our public art. Just think about that, let alone our art museums. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Donna. Tim Kenobi will be followed by Shannon Rich.
Good evening. Thank you guys for this opportunity. My name is Tim Kenobi. I'm born, raised, and live in Phoenix. I'm a former lifeguard for the city of Phoenix, and I'm currently a Phoenix firefighter. I love my job. Helping people in our community on their worst day motivates me to improve and continue doing the job I love. I know the job I signed up for is dangerous. I signed up not only to serve my community, but because I thought my employers would support me and my fellow firefighters. Will my employer support me if I get hurt or worse in the line of duty searching for your family or for your family pets in a house fire? Will my employer support me as I protect and search for those hurt in a mass shooting? Will my employer support me and my family when I get cancer? We as firefighters and our families understand these risks, and we take these risks because we are well trained and we want to protect our Phoenix community. Phoenix firefighters and police officers have voluntarily agreed to pay cuts to protect Phoenix. Firefighters did this because the city was suffering from a terrible recession, and we wanted to help Phoenix recover. Phoenix has now recovered. By agreeing to cuts in pay and health care, Phoenix firefighters and police officers have this saved the city nearly $500 million. Since 2010, Phoenix and Arizona have led the nation in economic recovery, seeing a healthy increase of almost 42% in our state shared revenue. Now the city's general fund sits at an all-time high of over $1 billion. The firefighters on the front line are going on 40,000 more calls a year than we did in 2008, and being stretched to the limit answering those calls and keeping our promise to the community with 160 less firefighters on the street. Promises are promises. As a firefighter, I promise to the citizens I will do everything I can to protect them. We're not asking for a raise. We're asking our elected leaders to uphold their promise. The City Council promised firefighters full restoration of our contracts. I keep my promise every day I get in the fire truck. We are all Phoenix. I support a raise in property taxes to maintain, improve public safety, pools, parks, community centers, youth programs, and I support fully restoring employee concessions. Join me and firefighters and support Phoenix. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Shannon Rich will be followed by Erica Keenan.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Rich. I'm representing the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. I just want to talk briefly about some of the proposed cuts that are in option 5 as they pertain to human services. Many of the city council members will remember in 2013, the city of Phoenix approved funding for domestic violence services for the Phoenix area. And with this funding, an unprecedented collaboration was formed between all of the service providers in Maricopa County and led to the creation of the Domestic Violence Centralized Screening Program. Additionally, with this funding, we were able to start a mobile housing unit, which helps connect the 5 Phoenix domestic violence shelters and the victims residing in those shelters with supportive housing. Reductions to the funding that's being proposed in option 5 will have an impact on our ability to continue to provide the housing support to victims in domestic violence shelters. Members of the council probably know this, but housing is a tremendous need for victims of domestic violence. And with this program, we are able to connect those victims with safe, permanent housing and prevent more victims of domestic violence from having to be in unsafe situations or go back to their abusers. Without this program or with it scaled back, we will not be able to connect as many victims to the safe housing that they need. So we're urging you to not consider those cuts in option 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you. Erica Keenan, and Erica will be followed by Craig Tripkin.
Council people and I too have been attending city budget hearing meetings for over 7 years. And every year, at least for the last 4 years, it seems like Groundhog Day, that we're in the same kind of situation. And what's even more frustrating to me is that we voted for a food tax and it ended early. And now, like, we're back in the same situation when we could have prevented this possibly or been in a better place. I'm for option 2, and the reason why I'm for option 2 is because everybody has skin in the game. And I do believe that property taxes should be raised. I mean, we're one of the lowest in the entire United States, but I feel like that should be considered as an option after the fact. That option 2 is the best because everyone has the skin in the game. We voted for the food tax and it was ended early. Our council representatives here, as a matter of fact, voted to end it early. I too am not in favor of $2.4 million in body cameras, and I'm confused because it says 14 personnel to support that. So there's additional 14 positions required to support those 700 body cameras. And back of the envelope addition or multiplication, $46,000 for an average salary of a police officer would give us 52 more police officers on the street. I live in Laveen, which is one of practically the last frontier of the city of Phoenix in terms of growth. We're growing by leaps and bounds. Our police precinct was combined for efficiency. We got reductions in police force, and so I really think that the $2.4 million in body cameras would be better spent with feet on the street. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Erica. Just to clarify, the food tax was voted by a vote of the council, not by a vote of the people. That's where the food tax came, and that's how the food tax ended. Craig Tripkin, and Craig will be followed by Dr. Ruth Ann Marston.
Hi, I'm here to speak on about homelessness. And I'm here to support option 1 in the budget. Homelessness, Central Arizona Shelter Services, the regional homeless shelter, serves about 4,700 different people, individual, unduplicated people in a year. 62% of those people leave after 3 weeks, before 3 weeks is up. We've suffered a cut of 20% in the last 10 years in city funding, and that the option 5 proposes another 7% cut in city funding for Central Arizona Shelter Services. I want to remind everybody that homelessness is sort of a pay me now, pay me later kind of situation. If we don't have homeless services sufficient to address the need in the city of Phoenix, what we'll see is more emergency calls for the fire department, significant percentage, and this is just logic, significant percentage of police calls and fire department calls and emergency room visits are homeless. And so we all pay for it in one way or the other. And $52,000 is a small price to pay for homeless services in the city of Phoenix. So I urge you to consider option 1, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Dr. Ruth Ann Marston will be followed by Grace Arroyo Salinas.
Hi. Just looking at me, you can tell that what I bring to this discussion more than any other resource is experience. And I would like to qualify that experience by telling you that I'm in my 14th year on the Phoenix Elementary School Board, and I am an active member of the Friends of the Public Library, and those are the 2 issues that are really important to me. But to address the questions put by the council after that remarkably cogent and clear presentation, thank you all for that. That was really outstanding. I have never seen one that well done. I support option 2. I don't support an increase in the property tax until the county assessor that you can't control stops raising property values in a sort of random way, because I think you can't do the math correctly at this point. My property value went shooting up over the last 2 years. I didn't do anything to my house. I've lived in it for 50 years. Something happened in the assessor's office, and unless you can control that, you can't tell me how much my property tax is going up. But I can control how much I spend. So I support option 2. I do not believe that body cameras are important in the city of Phoenix. I do not think that we have a crisis in trust in our police or fire departments. I think it's far more important to restore the cuts to wages. But I do ask you to consider something that experience tells me is lacking in this budget, and that is safe havens for our children. Having worked in the bookstore of this library for years, intermittently, I can tell you that there are a great many children who rely on our public libraries for a safe haven after school every day, and when the libraries are closed, they're on the street. These kids come to the library for a couple of reasons. And by the way, many of them come from charter schools that don't have after-school programs. Public district schools tend to have after-school programs, but charter schools don't. And the kids wind up here waiting for their parents to get out of work. They don't even have an option of being latchkey kids, because they're hauled to school every day. They're not close enough to get home, and they don't have a safe place to go. Many of them come from broken families, and the custody papers for these children, which we see in our schools on a daily basis, require a safe transfer point from one parent to another. And at this library, the safe transfer point is the south door and the north door. One parent drops them off and the other parent lets them in. So I'm asking for safe havens with supervised programs at the local parks, and every library open every day so our kids have a place to go. And policemen they can go to if they need somebody.
Thank you, Dr. Marston. Grace Arroyo Salinas will be followed by Raul Daniels.
Manager, Budget Director, Councilwoman Pastor, and Councilman Nowakowski, sorry about that. I'm here today, first, my name is Grace Arroyo Salinas. I live in an area known as Central City South. In this area, it's a 2-square-mile area, and we have 4 public housings in that area. So we can't call them public housings anymore, but we have 90% of the residents there living at or below the HUD poverty levels. So when I speak about what I want for my community, I mean, we need it. This is something that we need. So I'm here to say that right now, Maricopa County and the city of Phoenix is ranked #1 in the U.S. of youth ages 16 to 24 that are out of school and out of work. Probably a lot of them from my community. With South Phoenix and Maryvale areas the most needed. At 2014, the youth crime shooting that happened at Cesar Chavez continues to haunt Phoenix. And since January 2016, several shootings have killed teens. In 1992, Phoenix City Streets teen program is named National Model by Carnegie Council on Adolescent Development. So this led to the creation of the At-Risk Youth Division and teen centers throughout Phoenix. And maybe some of you here went to some of those programs when you were teens. We lost our director, much heralded director from Parks and Recs, who retired in October 2001. The following director dismantled the teen programs, which included all outdoor sports programs because she disagreed with the program philosophy. Then the recession did the rest. Totally discontinued any youth program that we had. Today, we have more dog parks than we have teen programs. Recommendations for the council is that allocate the money so we can have the teen programs, and also develop a focus group that will lead to the creation of a strategy to address the needs of teens throughout the city of Phoenix. Please spend the money now and not in the end. Train them now, teach them now, support them now, and not as they're coming out of prison. Thank you.
So thank you, Grace. I just want to let you know that I'm working really hard on the disconnected youth. I sit on a committee with the county, Maricopa County, and the city of Phoenix, and a number of nonprofits and schools. So we are trying to address those needs within all our communities. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Grace. Raul Daniels. Raul's followed by Jasmine Hayes.
Hi, my name is Raul Daniels. I live out in Levine. And Grace kind of took some of my thunder, so I'll have to revise myself here as I go along. That number of youth that ranks us number one in the whole United States, the number is kind of shocking. We have 180 to 200,000 teens in this city and some of the surrounding cities, mostly Phoenix, 180 to 200,000 out of school and out of work. So guess what happens to our young people when they're out of school, out of work? Yes, at least several of the shootings and deaths we've had recently and occur practically several times a week now. So I have three recommendations to consider. One, to re-resurrect the City Streets Teen Program. The second is these folks right up here at the table, including the Parks and Recreation Director, conduct focus groups, about 10 of them, with about 15 teens in that age group. It means going out in the neighborhood and meeting with these kids. They got the best ideas on how to solve their issues. The third is to create partnerships with the schools, the business community, and the social service agencies, and create a holistic approach to providing these services to the teens. This was in place at one time before all these services were cut. Again, as we said, that we now have more dog parks than we do have teen centers. That's one hell of a message we're sending to our young folks. The dogs are more important than they are. There's plenty of crime prevention research out there that supports these type of programs. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention recommends after-school recreation programs as a prevention tool to preventing crime. Teens who do not participate in after-school programs are 3 times more likely to skip classes, 3 times more likely to use drugs, 3 times more likely to drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, and engage in sexual activity than teens that do not participate in after-school rec programs. The city of Los Angeles is now considered to have one of the best after-school rec programs in the country, and some pretty alarming data that came out of that, encouraging data, shall I say. They now have a juvenile arrest rate that dropped 42% as a result of the increase in after-school rec programs. Their youth incarceration rate dropped 73%. The city of Los Angeles, for every dollar they invested in after-school rec programs for teenagers, reduced crime-related costs by $2.50. This was really shocking to me. 69% of police chiefs throughout the whole country, that's 7 out of every 10 police chiefs, actually felt that it was more important to increase services for after-school rec programs that was to hire police officers. So, because you can prevent the crime versus going after them, locking them up after the fact. The last comment I want to make is teens sometimes are left out because they're seen as these near adult folks that don't really want to confine to our expectations, and yet they do vote. Every time these kids join a gang, they just voted. Every time one of these teen folks kill each other on the street or kill one of us, they just voted. Every time two teenagers become parents, they just voted. Please, let's take some time and invest in our teens. Thank you.
Hello. All right, my name is Jasmine Hayes. I work as a, excuse me, a GIS professional, and I also intern for the mayor's office, and I am an urban planner by degree. What I handed you all was a map that I made. It's what I do for a living. I study data and analyze it, and it's organized so you see the income level per area in the city. So red, that means it's pretty bad, and the yellow and the orange, that's pretty decent. So I mapped all of the grocery stores that we currently have throughout Phoenix, and all the empty spaces are where people lack access to food, which is known as a food desert. So the USDA defines a food desert as low-income areas not having access to food, grocery stores, supermarkets within a 1-mile buffer, which is also represented on that map. Now, also I have the white dots, which are also grocery stores, but they're cultural specific. So even if there is a grocery store, that's still considered a food desert because someone in that area might not particularly like that food. So that becomes and poses a problem as well. So an issue that was constantly repeated was prevention. So I have a certification from the World Bank Group in Risk Management for Development, and to reemphasize that it's time and time again proves globally that when you invest money before the fact, in food particularly, you mitigate issues and crime later on. So body cameras are great and all, and investing over $450 million into public safety is great, but when people are starving and they're pushed and forced into survival mode, you have no choice but to react and make sure you have food for your family. So if we can close those gaps and make sure there's grocery stores that the low-income residents can have access to, whether it's in their culture or not, or something that they would like to, excuse me, they would like to eat is obtainable. And we have to make sure that we take into consideration that a 1-mile buffer isn't the same as a 1-mile biking or 1-mile walking or whatever on a bus. It's not the same. So even though they might fall just on the edge of that 1-mile buffer, it might really be 2 or 3 walking. So that poses another issue. So again, my work ethic doesn't allow me to pose a problem without having a solution. So again, I am an urban planner by degree, so I encourage you all to get my feedback. If you want other data analyzed, I'm here. I can do it. So, but my main closing question is, are there any initiatives being done to close the food gap buffers, or what is the plan coming out? Because just quick before you answer that, I read the general plan, and it does state that Phoenix, that healthy food systems are an investment into infrastructure to help achieve the city's goals. So if it's an investment into infrastructure, then it should definitely be taken care of. No, I'm done.
Thanks, Jasmine. Adopted strategic goals for the next 35 years, and there's specific goals about food and access to food, which is going to guide our work. And we do work right now with United Way on a mobile bus to help take fresh produce to neighborhoods without access to it. But clearly, there's more we can do. So thank you for this work.
All right, thank you.
Joe Murphy. Joe Murphy will be followed by Jose Vejar. While Joe's coming up, Kevin Hedgepeth submitted a card, did not wish to speak, and said, reducing PAC programs for my children's school will leave them with no affordable place for aftercare. I'm in District 4 and rely on this service. The PAC program at AmeriSchools serves a lot of students. So I take that to mean Joe would not be in favor of option 5 because option 5 would affect PAC. I'm sorry, Kevin, who wrote this, would not be in favor of option 5. And with that, Joe, who also wants to speak on PAC.
Yes.
Go for it.
Hello, everybody. Michael, Laura, good to see you again. Ed, of course, too. I know quite a lot of people here. I could be here all night saying hello to everybody, but I won't. So yeah, what brought me here tonight primarily was the Phoenix After Schools program. My experience as a former city employee, as someone who grew up in Phoenix, and now as someone who lives just across the street, very close to this library, is that the Phoenix After School program is probably the best way to keep kids out of trouble around, adults, other young people who really want to focus on improving their lives. It gives them a safe place to go if they don't have a safe place to go after school, if their parents work in the evenings like mine did, that kind of thing. That said, also, I am in support of option number 1, and I would also be in support of the city really reviewing its contract with Veolia. As a current union member, I've stood on the strike lines with my brothers and sisters in the labor movement with ATU against Veolia. I've done a little bit of background research into this company. Everywhere they go, they act the same way. They're really poisonous for the community, and they're taking it all back to France. Nothing against any other country, but a company operating in the United States should be based in the United States. So, thank you.
Joe is followed by Jose Vejar. Is Jose here? Well, Jose comes up. We had Luz Mata, who asked not to speak, but wanted to support teen programs. Jose?
Good evening. My name is Jose Vejar, and this is my son, Josiah Vejar. Just picked him up from PAC program, so I totally support Greta, Joe, the firefighters, everyone. I totally support. I feel like it's all important, especially with the necessities that we need. Number 1, restoration of services, pay, benefits for our employees that have done this for 6 years. And, we're doing this for our families. We're balancing the budget for the city. I think it's time that there's other avenues that should be taken. Food tax, property tax, restore concessions, make it safe for our children, our family, transport. Let's make this the best city that we once were at one time. And would hate to see our city turn into another Flint, Michigan. With the poison there in the water. I mean, services are important for a reason, so we can avoid that. And so we're not compared. I mean, at one time, I had family members. I work for the city as well, City of Phoenix as well, for the water department. And I do represent and stand with ASME Local 2960, 100%. So, definitely restoration of concessions and totally take care of all the needs that we all want and need so we can all survive somehow, some way. But I believe food tax and property taxes, we haven't done it in 20 years or so. I think it's time that we catch up with everyone else, so we can help balance our budget, and get back to where we need and have our surplus still at the same time. Body cameras, I think, is kind of I don't know. I think we need more boots on the floor. And with the firefighters, police, other services, water, streets, we need to transport somehow from streets, from work to home to pick up our kids. So streets are important too as well. So I think it's something that we need to address now. 6 years is a long time for us to balance the budget for the city of Phoenix, and it's time for you to give back to the employees and to the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. And just to be clear, the water in Phoenix is very safe and very clean. Thanks for your work. We are nothing like Flint, Michigan with water. Absolutely not. Wendy Flood. Wendy will be followed by David Martinez III. While Wendy's coming, Mary Coronado submitted a card, did not wish to speak, but was in support of teen programs. Hi, Wendy.
Like I said, my name is Wendy Flood. I'm actually a resident of District 7, and I feel that not only does my District 7 councilman and neighboring District 8 councilwoman need to hear, but other council members, because they're 2 out of 7 or 8 that vote. And if we only voice to the 2 next to us, the other ones really don't know what the community needs and wants, and they're outvoiced a lot. And I felt that. I feel that from my councilmen, that they feel outvoiced. So I'm here to speak to the other council members and city managers and city staff, for maybe some of those council members who aren't here, to hear what council people and residents in other districts need. I want to thank the city for finally, after 10 years of empty promises, doing some improvements to this Cesar Chavez Park. It's a small drop in the bucket, but we really, really appreciate it, and it's being used, and it's beautiful. You guys did a great job. I want to thank them for finally widening 35th Avenue, for finally getting some bus coverage, for the graffiti hotline that unfortunately in the last 2 years I've had to call more than I would really like. They were actually very responsive and very nice. And so those are some of the positives that I definitely wanted to start off with. And for Councilman Narowski and Pastor and the work you guys have done, I know it is hard. But I definitely agree, reinstate our police, reinstate our fire, and reinstate our city employees. The fact that I found out that we have city employees still on furlough and taking unpaid holidays was a shock. I could not believe it. And the fact that you guys did not fulfill your promises, you need to fulfill your promises. So I do support reinstating all of that for all of our employees. Happy employees means for a happy city. I would also support the fact of selling more surplus. I know we have more than 2 or 3 police helicopters that we can sell. There's a lot of other things that we could sell to get a revenue. Boots on the ground, 100%. Body cameras, absolutely not. The fact that it's even on the table is ridiculous. We need boots on the ground. We wouldn't have the crime like some of these people mentioned if we had more officers out there, if we had more community action officer, which I saw was a cut somewhere in here, which I think is also ridiculous. If you have a police presence and you interact with your teen and community, your crime is going to go down. You be proactive, not reactive. That's a theme I've already heard here tonight. And then in regards to community centers and community services, Narowski's heard this a million times, but Levine needs something in our community. We are one of the fastest growing areas. We are a diamond in the rough. We are the phoenix in the phoenix. We are rising from the ashes. We have no place for youth, no place for seniors, no place for working moms to take their kids to get piano lessons and dance lessons, nothing. I'm not asking for a $5 billion facility. 75% of something is better than 0% of nothing for our youth and our teens and our seniors. Multi-purpose room, couple classrooms, a kitchen, and a splash pad. Is that really going to cost a lot of money? $11 million might cover that, maybe not. What about working with our schools? They sit there vacant. They have expenses. They have things to do too. We used to partner with the schools, I hear. Why haven't we approached the schools and worked with them? We can do all the city services in a school building, and then there you go. You don't have to build all the infrastructure. I have not heard that talked about. I know that my time is up, but that was some of the main things. Option 1, I'm supportive. Option 2 should be considered more than option 1, maybe half of the tax in option 1. I'm not for the food tax. I say you tax alcohol, adult entertainment, soda, and candies. I think you'd get a lot more money than on the basic necessities of bread, water, milk, and fruit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for those suggestions. We are forbidden by state law from taxing alcohol more than just sales tax, but appreciate your feedback on the options. David Martinez III will be followed by Will Buvadas.
Thank you very much, members and Mr. Manager. My name is David Martinez, a proud resident of District 4, which also is the home of St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance, where I work. We're based out of District 4, but we serve every district in the city of Phoenix, and in fact, we served in last year more than 65 million pounds of food throughout the city with 253 food distribution partners, smaller food pantries, churches, and community centers. Hunger exists in the city of Phoenix. 19% of Phoenicians, more than 272,000 people, cannot afford food in the city of Phoenix. 23% of Phoenicians live in poverty, which is why we stand firm against, again, the food tax. You are putting an extra burden to folks who cannot afford food in the first place. The average cost of a meal in the city of Phoenix is $2.85, and those who cannot afford it may be eligible for SNAP or food stamp benefits, which on average is about $1.30. So when the average cost of a meal is $2.85 in Phoenix, the SNAP benefit does not make that up. For the specific cuts, there are a lot of ways that closing many of the programs and services impacts more than just the programs and services at each of those centers. You're impacting a person's ability to access meals. We have a great partnership with the city of Phoenix at St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance. We serve more than 900 families at 15 Phoenix community centers. So if any of those are closed, you're impacting the food bank's ability to partner with the city and get family meals. If you close any of the Phoenix senior centers, any of the 9 that we serve more than 260 seniors on a monthly basis, food that they would otherwise not have because of their fixed income and they're having to choose between medicine and food. But I really want to hit on the children that we serve. We have a great partnership with 20 City of Phoenix parks, after-school PAC programs, and community centers where we serve more than 500 kids every day an after-school meal because many of them do not go home from school and enjoy a meal. They go to bed hungry. In addition to those 500, since we're at Burton Barr Library, we have a great partnership with many City of Phoenix libraries, 8 of them, where we serve after-school and summer meal programs. Every day we serve more than 125. If you cut any of those libraries, that impacts our ability to help make a dent on the amount of kids that are going to bed hungry every night. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, David. Will Buvadas, and will be followed by Bridget Jordan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Will Buvadas. I'm a proud Phoenix police officer. I'm also the treasurer and chief negotiator for the Phoenix Law Enforcement Association, and I represent the men and women of the Phoenix Police Department. I'm also a proud resident, District 7. Raised my family at 67th Avenue in Lower Buckeye. I live in a predominantly minority community. I send my kids to predominantly minority school in Flower Elementary School District, and we're proud to be part of the community. All Phoenix police officers are proud to be part of the community. One of the officers in the back in uniform there, I know her and her husband, who's a Phoenix firefighter, live at 32nd Street in Thomas in that area, because you have committed men and women on both the police department and the fire department who are committed to this community. And I can't tell you how demoralizing it is when they look at the budget and they go, hey, so the city doesn't have money to give us our concessions back, but they have money for body cameras, they have money for electronic fire systems, so basically the city's using our concessions to pay for our equipment. That's ridiculous. That is demoralizing to the men and women who serve you guys every day. The phone calls I get from them are ridiculous. I got friends that work in other departments. I called my buddy up the other day, works in Glendale Police Department. I go, hey, why don't you come lateral to Phoenix? We're finally hiring again. Come over here. And he laughs at me. He goes, all I see you guys taking concessions. We're getting a 5% raise June 30th. I call my buddy in Mesa and go, hey, why don't you come over to Phoenix? He goes, oh, we're getting a 3% raise in July. You guys still taking concessions in Phoenix? Right now, we're recruiting people because we haven't hired for 7 years. Over the next 3 years, we're going to be hiring a significant number of officers. It's going to get hard to recruit people when the headline they see is pay cut after pay cut after pay cut. You'll no longer get the best cops, the best firefighters, and the best city employees. All city employees need their concessions restored. We all gave them up in 2010. We were promised to get them back. The council needs to make the tough decisions. You know, one thing I will say is we have a good city manager. Ed Zerker is a good guy. He's an honest guy. I know him to be an honest guy full of integrity. I wouldn't say that about the last city manager, right, who took the money and ran. That's partially why we're in this situation, because of the decisions the last city manager put us in. And I do know that Ed has hard choices, but the council also needs to be leaders. Here in a couple days, all the city unions went to fact-finding for our contracts. Those decisions will be released in the next couple days. And I would urge the council to respect the process. If you want your city employees to respect you and to continue to do the good work they do, you should respect the process of the fact finders. You guys should also be leaders. I think I speak on behalf of everybody that we're all sick of 5-4 votes. We're all sick of the political bickering in the council. You guys need to get together as 9 and come up with a plan to restore the concessions over the next 2 years. And if you think body cameras are important or this other stuff's important, find the revenue sources to make it happen. But don't take it from the employees and don't take it from the community. Thank you.
Bridget Jordan. While Bridget comes up, Gail Hedgepeth did not wish to speak, but said the elimination of services at senior centers and also some of the Phoenix after-school center sites, which our family is dependent on for safe, inexpensive after-school care, would be opposed to that, and reduction of library services and homes is of concern, as are grants for the arts. So thank you, Gail, for submitting that. Bridget Jordan, and Bridget will be followed by John Dean.
Hi, I just want to say I'm going to be talking about public art, which is something that my colleague Donna Reiner also covered in depth, but that we're bringing our cause, and our comments are not in any way to negate any of the very important proposals that have been brought up here. But a city is multifaceted, and it takes a lot of different qualities to attract people here and keep people here, and create our uniqueness, which is important to our economic vitality. I came from Tucson actually in 2001, and at that time Tucson was far ahead of Phoenix in terms of its cultural identity, I think, in terms of its downtown, in terms of its 24/7 nightlife, the funk factor, if you will. And I had the pleasure of working for the city of Phoenix and getting a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at how hard the city council has worked and the city manager's office to really raise our city's, I guess, beautification in a lot of ways. There's been an amazing public art program in place, and we have over 180 public art pieces around the city, and those include things that are built right into the infrastructure of the city. So there's a beautiful marriage between art and functionality. So you'll see it at your bus stops, you'll see it in the airport, which is so important to our visitors, so that we leave a lasting impression. And not only that, there's a lot of employment when it comes to building these art pieces. So we've started a little nonprofit to help the city, to help raise money and help the city maintain these public art pieces. And we are just a brand new nonprofit. So one day I'm hoping that we can raise money to build more public art pieces, but right now we're just raising money to help maintain the public art pieces that we have. Fixing them, repainting them, taking care of the paintings that we have, or myriad of other things. So one of the things is to assist the city of Phoenix and the public art, but also to raise awareness and to get the city's residents to look around and really see the pieces that are near them and spark creativity. We won't have innovation without creativity, and it can trickle down to the youth, and in some ways, someday maybe even work its way into a STEM, connection where we're, using the art around us to assist in education. So I just wanted to say thank you for restoring some of the partial funding that you have for the public art program, also for the maintenance of the cultural facilities like the Museum of Art, etc. And if you could continue to support the maintenance of the public art and raise it a little while we get our feet, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget. John Dean is a speaker. I think I saw Hallie with the card. Are there any other cards? Let's get them in now. Jean, did you want to speak? No? Before John speaks, Abraham James did not wish to speak, but very much supporter of libraries, arts and culture, parks, senior and youth centers, historic preservation, police, and fire department. I support the property tax increase, Abraham James. Caitlin Carr did not wish to speak, but says she supports option 1 and am wholeheartedly against option 5. Patricia Dean did not wish to speak and says, please keep your word and restore full pay, 4.2% to fire and police. They and their families have taken the cuts and worked the furloughs. Now it is time for full restoration, from Patricia Dean. And Julie Collins did not wish to speak, but asked for restoration of benefits to City of Phoenix employees, no more furloughs, previous pay restored. We are all doing more with less pay, less employees, from Julie Collins. John Dean, and John will be followed by Patrick Seffer? Patrick. John.
Thank you, City Manager. My name's John Dean. I'm a Phoenix Fire captain. I work up in north side town, but I pretty much worked all over. This is my third meeting, and what I like to do is kind of going around listening to what people are saying. Here's what I'm hearing. They want the community. They want to have community centers, libraries, senior centers. They want the after-school programs. They want places for their kids, and they're willing to pay more. They're asking either option 1 or option 2 that the city manager has lined out. And the other thing that I've been hearing is full concessions for employees. As Will talked about, we've taken these cuts, and what happens is kind of like we have this list of things that we would like to have, and then there's things that we need. 6 years ago, we took those concessions, we actually took 3.2%, and then we took 1.6 restored, and another cut giving us that 4.2. But the other thing the city employees have done also is we've also tried to help the city when it comes to pensions. And the reason why I bring this up is because on the public safety, we're making 4% less because when we actually contribute more. And then the other thing is I know the other City of Phoenix employees have also had their retirement. And so it's about 8.2 plus healthcare costs. Most of our members across the board, I don't care where you work in the city, you're making about 10% less is what you're making. So we're asking at this time for those restorations. And I would ask, and I would reiterate exactly what Will said before, and I talked about this in the last meeting, the city manager was there up in Sunny Slope, was that, the challenge obviously is there's only X amount of dollars coming in, but how do we accomplish this? But the real goal is moving forward. How do we continue to grow in revenue streams? When I was down to the Jefferson Center the other day or last week, one of the last speakers talked about it. It's really your guys' challenge. Come up with ways of how to continue bringing in the revenue and meeting the needs of the city. I think we all live in this city because we enjoy the city. We use the parks. We use all the centers. We use all those things. And I think most people are willing to pay for that. So, that being said, I would say you guys have the toughest thing going forward is how do we continue to thrive and bring that money in the city, and how do we restore the pay for the workers in the city. So thank you.
And the last card of the evening is for Patrick Seifter. Okay.
Hello. My name is Patrick Seifter, and I've been listening tonight, and I'm in support of option 1, the raising of the property tax, because we cannot keep shortchanging our poorest citizens with a food tax. We cannot keep shortchanging our public employees by not paying them what you've promised. But on top of that, I'm also here because I live in District 4, and I want our city to continue the partnership that they've been doing for a very long time with our public schools and after-school programs. And none of this can be done unless if we generate some real revenue. And that has to be option 1. So by doing that, we can give our public employees the pay they need. By doing that, we can make sure our citizens have better access to food. By doing that, we can make sure our children have after-school programs and better schools to go to. That's why I support option 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Those are all the cards. Before our council members give us final words, I'll just say the process is as follows. There are 2 more public hearings. Next Tuesday evening, there are 2 hearings. One hosted by Councilwoman Pastor at Metro Tech High School. It is specifically oriented towards our young people that Councilwoman Pastor will host at Metro Tech at 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 19th. And there will be another hearing at the same time at the Buff Community Center at 35th Avenue and Pinnacle Peak. Then there will be a presentation to the City Council on May the 3rd with the proposed budget, that is the proposal that comes from taking in all this input, and the council will vote on May 17th. With that, I would just remind you again, you can find all this information on phoenix.gov/budget. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to Councilman Pastor and Councilman Nowakowski.
Well, once again, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for telling us the Phoenix story. And it's a true Phoenix story because we're hearing it from the residents of the city of Phoenix. But what's really sad is to hear our employees coming to us and saying that Phoenix was a place where people wanted to work. Phoenix was a place where families from generations to generations worked here, and now they don't feel that we're keeping our promise. So exactly like what the last captains talked about is that we have a hard decision. We have to sit down and we have to work together as a team and take that Team Phoenix approach and figure this out. And we need to get all 9 of us on the same page. And we got to cut out all the political bullshit, excuse my language, and fix it. Because I am tired. I'm tired of going to my district, tired of going out to Levine and hearing about we need a community center, we need a senior center, tired of coming out here saying, you know, the roads out here are potholes and all this. The infrastructure needs work. Our city needs help. And it's up to us as leaders to fix it. And I think we need to start with our employees first. And we really need to restore all those broken promises that we haven't been able to restore. And we need to bring back the morale of our staff. And once that morale is back, I think that whole Team Phoenix approach of working together, finding solutions, because we were in about $268 million deficit when I first got elected. And I go, oh my God, what did I get myself into, right? But it was our employees. It was individuals in this room that were saying, you know, we're willing to cut some of the library hours, but at the same time, we're going to keep our libraries. We're willing to take a pay cut, but at the same time, we're going to keep the programs going. And that's the approach that we need to do now, is we need to sit down and figure it out. If it's a property tax or other taxes or other ways to generate funds, and making sure that we restore that morale of our employees, first of all. Second is that we need to make sure that our police and fire have the men and women that they need to do their jobs. Because all of us get those phone calls. We need more police officers. We want to make sure that we have enough firefighters so when you call that 911, that there's somebody on the other end to answer that phone call, first of all, and that there's somebody there to dispatch. If your loved one's having a heart attack, we want to make sure that we have a paramedic that can be there within seconds or minutes. And if you get your house broken into, and it might not be something very serious because that person's not there anymore, but if you're waiting there for 5 hours and it's the first time that you've ever been violated by having your house broken into, that seems like an eternity, and it's not right. And we need to make sure that we give back that customer service that you all deserve. And I'm going to try to work hard with my colleagues, with the mayor, with our city manager, and our new director of research and budget to figure this thing out. Because we can't continue to come to y'all and ask for help or tell you that we're going to be cutting programs and then we scare people. Especially the senior centers. I mean, to hear some of the seniors in the other budget hearings, they're scared because it's the only hot meal that they receive on a daily basis, and it's wrong to have individuals being afraid of where they're going to get a hot meal each day. So once again, thank you so much for telling us the Phoenix story, how important the arts are, how important that diversity of culture is, how important it is to have an after-school program for our kids, how important it is to have all of our programs, and how special our employees are. So I will try full-heartedly to make sure that the morale of our employees are back to where it should be, and that we work as a Team Phoenix approach to solve this, and I think we can do it. We have that yes we can attitude, and I think we can do it. With that, I'll pass you on to Laura Pastor.
So I want to thank everybody for being here and thank you for participating. I feel like this year, as when I first entered office, I was, the first year was a deficit, and when I entered, I was like, what do you mean this is what's going to get cut? And when I first went through the process, I was kind of in shock. And when I came back and I said, well, if we're really truly going to have a community input and dialogue, I would like to see many different options and have a dialogue with the community about the options and what they really see and value and that is important. So I want to thank the city manager and Jeff for doing that because I think this is probably really the first time we hear different options and people state why they want the different options and the reasons how they're looking at it. In addition to that, this time around, it's been really, I have enjoyed this piece because there's a lot of clarity in the budget and a lot of transparency that has happened within the budget. And so that's the other piece that I wanted for the community to hear and know. We do have some difficult decisions. We are in leadership roles. We will make those decisions. I hope that all 9 of us could come together and work together, but the likelihood of that you will see in the vote, and you will see how it plays out. If we can agree to an option, that'll be great. I'm not sure if all of us will agree to that one option, but I do have hope for that. Our employees did take concessions. All employees took concessions, and it's important for morale reasons to look at restoring them and being able to look at the budget and be able to see if we're able, have the ability to do that. I do know that many people would like public safety and fire to have more staff, and so we are working fast and furious in doing that and getting to that point. It does take a long process, and we are planning on hiring 300 officers. We're in the middle of the process, but it's difficult, and we're trying to get there as quickly as we can. But there are certain pieces that we're not able to move faster. So I just want to give you reassurance of that. Same with fire. We are hiring fire, and we're in the process of doing that. So there's good news, and there's some light, and there's some hope. But would like to get our morale up. Our morale is not at the level that it should be, and are hoping to work towards that. And we will collectively work together to get there. So thank you for being here, and thank you to the city manager and Jeff for doing this process.
You have been watching a community budget hearing held recently in Phoenix. For questions, comments, or ideas, please visit phoenix.gov or call 602-262-4800. You can also send feedback through social media by using #PhoenixBudget. This video can also be seen online at phoenix.gov/PHXTV or youtube.com/City of Phoenix AZ.